Thanks, Jake. One of the early kind of themes of the messages of the administration was foreign policy for the middle class. I was just wanted to ask, is that still a driving theme, and is it now harder to achieve considering these increasing challenges around the world? What's going on now in Sudan, pardon me, as well as Ukraine?
So, I've heard some voices saying, for example, we shouldn't support Ukraine because we have to be focused at home. And my answer to that is the same answer the Democratic and Republican presidents have given over the course of decades, which is we're the United States of America. We can and must do both. We can look after our people at home and make far-reaching investments in the middle class here for good-paying jobs for years and decades to come, while also standing up for the values that we hold dear around the world, including the value of freedom and freedom for the people of Ukraine. We are capable of doing both, and that's not an abstract proposition. That is the last year since the war broke out. In that time, we have not only mobilized an international coalition to resist Russian aggression and to protect Ukraine as a sovereign and independent country, we have also made historic investments in clean energy, in infrastructure, in technology, in the United States, investing in this country in ways that are going to make the middle class stronger, more vibrant, and bigger than it was when President Biden took office. So from my perspective, the United States has significant obligations around the world, obligations that relate directly to our national security and to the well-being of working people here in this country. We will discharge those obligations. We will do that while at the same time putting in place the most significant set of investments in more than a generation in working people, middle-class people in the United States. And so I think the results speak for themselves. And the answer is yes, we still are committed to a foreign policy for the middle class. Yes.
Thanks, Jake. You said from the podium that the U.S. government has been telling Americans not to go to Sudan for more than a decade, and if they're there, to leave. Obviously, that message has had limited impact because there are thousands of Americans who were living in Sudan when this fighting broke out. Is there more that needs to be done for Americans in countries where you think they should not be to drive home that message in a more direct way so that they're not in harm's way when danger erupts?
Look, Americans are free people. We cannot dictate where they travel, tell them they must go or not go to a particular place. We can only give them the best, clearest, most sustained, most consistent advice. And we have been as clear, as consistent, and as sustained as we possibly can over the course not just of this administration, but previous administrations, to tell people about the dangers of living in Sudan. I would also point out that the American people do need to understand, as I've stood at this podium and said in other contexts, like in Ukraine, it is not standard practice for the United States to send in the U.S. military into war zones to extract all American citizens. We didn't do it in Libya, we didn't do it in Syria, we didn't do it in Yemen, and no, we didn't do it in Ukraine. Afghanistan was a unique case involving the end of a 20-year war that the United States was centrally involved in. But Americans should understand that we will go to great lengths to support and facilitate their departure from difficult circumstances, that we will try to protect them from harm as best as we possibly can, but that there should not be a broad expectation of a massive military operation to seize an airport or otherwise evacuate people from a country. And that has been the pattern over the course of many years. It is the exception, not the rule, for us to do something like that. Yeah.
So when it comes to those great lengths you just mentioned, Kirby this morning said that right now, it's not very safe to try and run some larger evacuation, but should we take that to mean that there is a willingness to conduct a larger scale evacuation if and when conditions improve, or no?
Well, there's certainly a willingness to take steps to help Americans be able to get out of the country. And if those steps in a risk analysis included, potentially facilitating civilian flights or anything else along those lines, the president has asked for every conceivable option to be able to help Americans. We would like to help as many Americans go as possible, but we want to be able to do so in a way that is fundamentally reducing overall risk, not increasing overall risk. That's the calculus that we're making on a day-to-day basis. And right now, we believe that the best way for us to help facilitate people's departure is in fact to support this land evacuation route, as well as work with allies and partners who are working on their own evacuation plans as well.
Can you just take us a little bit behind the scenes of the president's decision to evacuate the embassy on Friday night? What was it that tipped the scale for him to realize, this is go time?
I think it was a combination of three things. One, the opportunity presented itself because it became clear to us that this was a viable operation, that we could run it, we could do it, and so he thought, okay, you've given me an option that will be successful. Second, it became clear also that there was a decent likelihood that we would see some form of protracted conflict, even if punctuated by moments of ceasefire, and so we couldn't just wait for the end of this all. And then third and finally, there were considerations, which I won't go into great detail here, involving how long you can sustain a platform with a full complement of U.S. personnel living at an embassy indefinitely while fighting is raging and supplies are difficult to obtain. So you put all of those things together. The president felt this was the right moment. It was the right opportunity. He directed his military to seize that opportunity, and they successfully carried out the mission.